Hello and welcome to my presentation, which is on Sophomore Jinx. This is a case 3 for business statistics. Let's start with our presentation. My presentation comprised of 7 elements, which we will cover one by one in this presentation till the end. So let's start with what is Sophomore Jinx. Sophomore Jinx is usually associated with the professional sports. This is kind of perception or observation that athletes often perform well in their first season competition in comparison to their second or sophomore season competition. In case of business, this is a related phenomena. Sometimes refers to a decline in performance immediately being on the cover of a national publication, or if a company grows in a one first year, then it usually drops in a second year. So how to check if sophomore Jinx is true? So we have used in this presentation the statistics help to calculate if this phenomena is actually true or not. So we have used the t-test for related measures to calculate the sophomore Jinx. So the question comes, why t-test for related measures chosen? Because we have chosen the data which is on baseball players' scores for first season and the second season. So in this case, the the before scores and are one sample and after scores are a second sample, but each pair of scores is related because the two measurements apply to same person. So which data we are going to use to calculate the sophomore Jinx? Here we have the data for the American League baseball players for their first season performance and the second season performance. You can see there's a star marked columns. These are the columns which I have used in my calculations to calculate the Jinx. So we have wins on the left and the games played on the right for the yellow section. Same for the wins on the left and games played on the right for the orange section. So what I have done is divided the wins by games played to calculate the percentages to further calculate the t-test. So why I have used the wins over games percentage for each player? Because I personally feel very comfortable with the percentage value, because it's really easy assess to know how well one is performing without getting into the lengthy calculations and observe how to start the t-test. So we have decided that we are using t-test for the related measure studies because the two samples are related. It is a one-tailed test because the same individuals are being used in a before and after study. The desired result is to decrease in performance, which shows hypothesis is the one-tailed test because we are looking at the decrease in performance. Here the alternative hypothesis is d greater than 0. Why? Because we want to prove that the scores decreased from before and after, and because the difference is computed by subtracting after rating from the before rating, the desired alternative hypothesis is d greater than 0. For example, a player scores 32 in the first season and 30 in the second season, because we want to show that it is a decrease in the performance in second year. So if we subtract 32 minus 30, it comes out 2, which is greater than 0. So that's why I have chosen hypothesis d greater than 0 to state the t-test to prove the sophomore Jinx. So the formulas enlisted in this slide are we have used to calculate the t, and the t-test for dependent measures uses the sample difference d between individual matched sample values as the basic measurement of analysis instead of individual sample values. Analysis of the d values effectively converts the problem from a two sample problem to a single sample of difference, which is an adaptation of the single sample means formula. So this test utilizes the sample mean of difference and standard deviation of the difference SD, which can be computed by using the formulas stated in step number 5. So The alpha value, or we can say that the error value we have chosen here is 0.05. So our confidence interval to prove that there is a sophomore jinx is 95% confidence we are that there is a sophomore jinx present in the sports. Degree of freedom is calculated by subtracting 1 from the total number of samples. Here we have 14 samples minus 1 is equals to 13. By looking at the t table, the t value comes out 1.771. Now, it's time to make the decision rule. So this t decision rule is to reject the null hypothesis if t observed value is greater than 1.771. So we can use the Minitab in Excel to calculate the t-values by using the data analysis tool. So here I have used the data analysis tool pack in the Excel, and the output I have come up with, the t-status comes out 2.47 and t-critical 1.77. So our decision was to reject the null hypothesis if t-critical value comes out less than the t-stat value. Also, if you can have a quick look at the alpha and the p-value, the p-value also is less than the alpha value. So we will reject the null hypothesis. One thing to notice is we have 15 samples, but degree of freedom comes out 13, because Excel is not taking the sample value which has 0 values in it. For example, the player number 10 has 0 sample value, so Excel is not calculating the values which is equals to 0. So after doing all the t-test, what is the business implications? So there is enough evidence to conclude on average the phenomena known as sophomore jinx do exist in the sports. And I have taken the help of the graph to show the observed value, rejection region, and the critical value, t-value for the sophomore jinx phenomena. Here you can see the red area where my t-stat value falls. So it's greater than the critical value. Which is very easy to see that the blue line is for the rookie year, for the first year, and the red line for the sophomore year. So there is a clear view of concluding that players performed well in first year rather than in the second year. But there is no sophomore jinx for few players. So that's why this presentation have few assumptions, and the assumptions I have made is the two populations are normally distributed to apply the t formula, and the value of alpha is 0.05. The hypothesis mean difference is 0, which is asked in the Excel when you use the t-test t-sample test for related measures. And we have assumed that all baseball players have been covered who have played in the first year and in the second year, and the data provided in Exhibit 3, which is the case 3 for my statistics class, is accurate data, is comprised with accurate data. Now comes up with the limitations. So there are certain limitations in the data calculated because there is no data available for the other players or the other sports which I can link up with. There is no data available for the soccer team or other kind of sports which I can use to calculate there is a sophomore jinx present in other sports too. And there is no specific data for the businesses to show that if they are actually suffering with the jinx phenomena. Few players, if you go back and check the data, player number 3, 5, and 9 performed better in sophomore year. So I cannot say that the sophomore jinx is kind of psychological rather than and a truth or a fact, because in some players it worked and at some players it doesn't. So there is no in-depth information or reasons of why less performance in second year for some players, because there could be a reason of injury or some kind of the bad health or any other issues, personal professional issues. Because of them few players performed less in the second. Is there any jinx in the world of business? One factor to calculate jinx which I come up with is IPO, that is initial public offering, the first sale of stock by a private company to the public. By saying all about execution, I mean that in the long run, a company is judged based on how management executes on its plans. And the acid test to compare the first analyst report on a company which actually comes out just after the IPO and contains a 1-year target based on the company's plans with how it actually did last year. So I have used the IPO analysis to check how much they have performed just after they come to the public, um, from their private status to the public status. So the chart on Zynga and Facebook for the first year post IPO shows that Facebook and Zynga didn't meet expectations, and a significant drop in IPO in the second year. This shows a sophomore jinx in certain industries, because it's sometimes exciting to come from a handful of employees and show stirring finances to being worth billions of dollars, and it's easy to get caught up in all praises from bankers angling for a part of your IPO business. So both setting up high expectations can come back to haunt you. So it's always better to under promise and over deliver. So sometimes when they come to the public, they try to set up high expectations which they do not meet up, and they faces a decline in the share prices. So for more jinx or business strategies issue. So in the business, there are a couple of businesses which the business has to go ahead with the vision and the mission, and it comes to a stage where it start declining. So at that time, the company has to really focus on the strategy diamond, and they need to invest on the technology, or they have to come up with a new plan through which they can avoid the sophomore jinx. These are the works cited for this presentation, and thank you so much for listening.